She stood at the back of the closet, 1958, brushing a garment bag nobody had opened in years. What did your grandmother quietly throw away, and why all at once? To understand what vanished, you have to understand the closet itself. In the post-war years, a homemaker did not own dozens of outfits. She owned a small, carefully chosen wardrobe where every single piece had a job. Each item was mended, pressed, and worn until it earned its place. When something disappeared from that closet, it was not because she got bored. It was because the entire world around her changed, and the clothing simply stopped making sense. Start with the foundation garment that ruled the decade, the girdle. Almost every grown woman owned one, and she put it on before anything else most mornings. It smoothed the line of a dress and was simply expected under good clothes. By the time tights and softer shapewear arrived in the 60s, the rigid daily girdle started its slow slide out of the closet until it became the thing daughters found, held up, and could not imagine wearing. Right beside the girdle hung its partner, the full slip. No woman of the era would step out in a dress without one underneath, smoothing the fabric and keeping a skirt from clinging. Slips came in nylon and rayon, trimmed with little bands of lace at the hem. They were so ordinary that nobody thought to save them. Today, you find them folded at the bottom of a drawer, soft and yellowed, a quiet relic of a rule everyone followed. Then came the crinoline, the stiff layered petticoat that gave the full skirt its swing. A young woman in 1957 might wear 2 or 3 at once, starched until they crackled when she walked. They made a dress bloom out like an upside-down flower. When silhouettes narrowed in the next decade, the crinoline had nowhere to go. It was bulky, it was loud, and it took up half a closet, so it was among the first things quietly carried out to the trash. Gloves were not an accessory in the 50s. They were part of being dressed. A woman owned several pairs, short cotton ones for daytime errands, and longer ones for church or an evening out. She kept them in a drawer lined with tissue and never left the house bare-handed for anything formal. Within a generation, the custom faded almost completely. The gloves stayed in the drawer got cleaned out, and a small daily ritual went with them. No outfit was finished without a hat, and the 50s hat was a small marvel. There were pillbox hats perched at an angle, wide-brimmed straw for summer, and little half hats anchored with a hidden comb. A homemaker often had a separate hat for church and another for shopping downtown. As the 60s loosened the rules and big hairstyles took over, the daily hat lost its place. It became something worn for a wedding, then for nothing at all. Stockings in the 50s came with seams running straight up the back of the leg, and keeping that line straight was a small daily art. They fastened to garters that hung from the girdle, 4 little clips holding everything in place. A woman checked her seams in a shop window before walking in. When seamless nylons and then pantyhose arrived, the whole system of seams and garters and clips simply dissolved, and a daily fuss disappeared overnight. The bullet bra gave the decade its unmistakable silhouette. Stitched in tight concentric circles, it shaped a pointed, structured line under a sweater. Pin-up pictures and sweater girls made it the look every young woman wanted. It was rigid where modern lingerie is soft, and the moment fashion turned toward natural shapes, the cone-shaped cup looked instantly dated. Daughters found them in dresser drawers years later and could not believe their mothers wore something so engineered every single day. Every kitchen had an apron, and not the flimsy kind. The 50s apron was a real garment, often homemade from feed-sack cotton or a bright printed fabric, with deep pockets and a generous skirt. A woman put it on the moment she got up and took it off when company arrived. It protected one of her few good dresses. As wardrobes grew cheaper and dishwashers spread, the daily apron stopped being necessary, and most of them ended up as dust rags. Before slacks were acceptable everywhere, women wore the house dress. It was a simple cotton shift, buttoned down the front, comfortable enough for chores, yet decent enough to answer the door. A homemaker might own 3 or 4, washing and rotating them through the week. They never wrote it down, but every woman knew you did not face the day in your nightgown. The house dress was the uniform of ordinary mornings, and it faded the moment casual clothes took over. Tucked under the house dress was the dressing sack, a short, loose bed jacket worn over a nightgown in the morning. It kept the shoulders warm while a woman fixed her hair and set out breakfast before she was fully dressed. They were often quilted or trimmed with ribbon, light and pretty, and entirely private. Nobody outside the family ever saw one. As heated homes and warmer nightwear made them pointless, the bed jacket quietly vanished, remembered now only in old catalog pages. When the temperature dropped, a woman reached for her car coat, a short, boxy wool coat cut to fall just below the hip. It was made for getting in and out of the new family automobiles without yards of fabric bunching on the seat. Practical, swing-cut, and warm, it suited a decade obsessed with the car. As coat styles changed and the name itself faded, the car coat became one of those pieces nobody could quite name when they found it. Few items say the era like the poodle skirt, a wide felt circle skirt with an appliqued poodle stitched near the hem. Teenage girls wore them to sock hops, the felt swinging out when they danced. They were a fad more than a staple, bright and playful and tied to a single slice of youth. Fads age fast. Within a few years, the poodle skirt looked like a costume, and most were folded away, given off, or simply outgrown and discarded. Sweater girls made the twins set a wardrobe cornerstone. It was a matched pair, a short-sleeved shell worn under a buttoned cardigan in the very same color and knit. A woman could wear the shell alone in summer or layer both for cooler days. It was tidy, respectable, and endlessly photographed on movie stars. As separates and looser knits took over, the matched twin set stopped feeling fresh, and the careful pairing of 2 pieces drifted out of fashion. Saddle shoes carried girls through school and Saturday nights alike. They were sturdy Oxfords with a contrasting dark band, white polished bright and the saddle kept dark, often worn with rolled bobby socks. A girl might whiten the leather every weekend, so they looked new for Monday. When sneakers and loafers took over the teenage foot, the saddle shoe became a relic of one specific decade, charming in a photograph but gone from real closets. For chilly mornings before central heating reached every room, women wore long underwear and woolen union suits under their clothes. These were practical layers, never glamorous, kept folded in a bottom drawer, and pulled out when the house turned cold. As furnaces and insulated homes spread across the country, the need for bulky base layers simply melted away. Nobody mourned them, and nobody kept them, which is exactly why so few survive to be found in an attic today. The shirtwaist dress was the workhorse of the post-war closet, a fitted bodice that buttoned like a shirt, a nipped waist, and a full skirt. A homemaker could wear it for cleaning in the morning and look perfectly presentable for an afternoon visit. It was modest, flattering, and easy to iron. As the decade ended and shifts and pants moved in, the structured shirtwaist began to feel formal for every day, and it slipped from a daily uniform to a Sunday memory. Bermuda shorts gave women a respectable way to bare a little leg. They fell neatly to the knee, far longer than anything that came later, and were considered daring enough that some clubs and streets frowned on them. A woman wore them for gardening, picnics, and casual summer afternoons in the backyard. As hemlines crept up and shorts got shorter through the 60s, the prim knee-length Bermuda looked old-fashioned and quietly slid out of the summer drawer. Pedal pushers were the casual cousin of the slack, calf-length trousers made for riding a bicycle without the cuff catching in the chain. They were trim and youthful, worn with flat shoes and a tied blouse on relaxed days. Teenagers loved them for their easy freedom. As full-length jeans and capris took over, the in-between calf-length cut lost its purpose, and pedal pushers, like so many 50s pieces, became a word grandchildren had never heard. Under formal dresses lived the Merry Widow, a long-line corset that cinched from the bust to the hips in one boned piece. Brides and partygoers wore them under strapless gowns to create that smooth hourglass line. They were tight, hooked up the back, and not made for comfort. There is a whole world hiding in what nobody said out loud about how those silhouettes were built. As soft, modern foundations arrived, the boned Merry Widow was retired without ceremony. A woman did not let her hair touch a pillow without a hairnet or a sleep cap. After a fresh set of pin curls, she tied a net or a soft bonnet over her head to protect the style overnight. It meant her hair held for days between salon visits. As wash and wear styles and home dryers changed the routine, the nightly net stopped being needed. They never wrote it down, but every woman knew the set had to be protected. The swing coat was a piece of pure architecture, cut wide and flaring from the shoulders so it floated over the full skirts of the decade. It had no waist, just a clean trapeze line that moved when a woman walked. It needed all that room because of the crinolines underneath. When skirts narrowed and the volume vanished, the swing coat had nothing to swing over, and the dramatic silhouette quietly went the way of the petticoats it once covered. Nylon was new and a little magical, so women filled their closets with nylon blouses, the kind that felt slippery and dried in an hour. They were marketed as the miracle fabric that never needed ironing. The trouble was that nylon trapped heat and held every odor, so on a warm day, it was its own small misery. As cotton blends improved and comfort won out, the sheer nylon blouse faded, fondly remembered for the promise more than the wearing. Capes had a brief, elegant moment. Short shoulder capes and capelets were worn over dresses for evenings and special occasions, draping over the arms without the bulk of sleeves. They were dramatic and a touch theatrical, perfect for the formal photographs of the era. But a cape is hard to wear in a busy life, and as women moved faster and dressed simpler, the impractical drape was folded into a trunk and rarely taken out again. Petticoats came in more than just stiff net. Soft cotton and rayon petticoats were worn under everyday dresses for modesty and warmth, a quieter layer than the showy crinoline. A woman owned several, plain and practical, washed alongside the slips. They were so completely ordinary that they left almost no trace in memory. As skirts narrowed and tights replaced layers, the humble petticoat slipped out of the wardrobe entirely, one of the truly invisible casualties of changing fashion. Galoshes and rubber overshoes protected good shoes from rain and slush. A woman pulled them on right over her heels before heading out in bad weather, then slipped them off at the door so her real shoes stayed dry. They buckled or snapped up the front and lived by the back step. As shoes got cheaper and easier to replace, fewer people bothered protecting them, and the clunky overshoe quietly disappeared from the hall closet of most homes. The dickie was a clever little cheat, a false collar and front panel worn under a sweater or jacket to mimic a full blouse. It gave the look of a crisp shirt without the bulk or the laundry of the whole thing. Thrifty women loved it because one good dickie dressed up many outfits. As wardrobes grew and the trick felt fussy, the dickie quietly retired, and most people today have no idea the half garment ever existed. Tap pants and step-in panties were the soft, loose undergarments worn before close-fitting briefs took over. Cut wide with a flared leg, often in satin or rayon, they were comfortable and a little luxurious. A homemaker owned a few delicate pairs kept for nicer days. As fitted nylon briefs became the norm, the breezy tap pant felt old-fashioned and slowly disappeared, surviving now mostly in vintage lingerie shops and the bottom of a grandmother's drawer. The first stole was the crown of a special evening. Even modest families saved for a fox or mink piece or bought a clever imitation to drape over the shoulders for church, weddings, and holidays. It came out a few times a year and was stored with care the rest of the time. As tastes and attitudes shifted, the fur stole fell out of favor, and many ended up boxed in attics, too sentimental to sell and too dated to wear. Charm bracelets told the story of a woman's life, one tiny figure at a time. A girl started one young and added a charm for a birthday, a wedding, a trip, a new baby. By her 50s, the bracelet could hold a dozen little silver memories that jingled when she moved. As fashions and jewelry simplified, the loaded charm bracelet came to feel cluttered, and many were tucked into jewelry boxes, their stories slowly forgotten with each passing year. Cat eye glasses turned a practical necessity into a statement. Upswept at the corners, sometimes set with tiny rhinestones, they framed a woman's face with a confident flourish. They were everywhere, on homemakers and movie stars alike, throughout the decade. As frame styles softened and rounded in the 60s, the dramatic upswept cat eye fell out of fashion fast, set aside in a drawer until decades later, when collectors finally rediscovered just how bold the design really was. The matching hat and bag set spoke to a woman's sense of order. The truly put-together homemaker coordinated her hat, her handbag, her gloves, and often her shoes into one deliberate palette. A boxy, structured handbag was chosen to match the hat exactly. As fashion grew more relaxed and the matched look gave way to mixing, the rigid, coordinated set felt stiff. The careful matching that once signaled good taste quietly stopped being the rule. Sunsuits and playsuits were the one-piece romper outfits women wore for the beach, the garden, and lazy summer afternoons. They combined a fitted top with attached shorts in one cheerful printed piece. They were practical for active days and felt fresh and modern at the time. As two-piece separates and proper swimwear took over, the all-in-one playsuit came to look childish, and the breezy summer staple drifted out of the adult wardrobe entirely. Before the sneaker conquered everything, women wore espadrilles and canvas wedges for casual summer days. The rope-soled flats were light and breezy, perfect for the porch and the boardwalk. They were inexpensive and considered a little bit continental and chic. As athletic shoes spread into everyday wear, the delicate rope sole could not compete on comfort or durability, and the espadrille slipped from a summer staple to an occasional fashion revival, mostly forgotten the rest of the time. The wrap dress of the era, the wraparound housedress, crossed over the front and tied at the waist, so one size fit many days and many shapes. A homemaker could pull it on over a slip in seconds and adjust it as she liked. It was the most forgiving and practical thing in the closet. As zippered and fitted dresses became the norm and casual clothes arrived, the simple tie front wrap quietly faded, replaced by garments that asked more of the body. Hat pins and decorative brooches were the small hardware of getting dressed. A long hat pin anchored a hat to upswept hair, and a brooch finished a collar or a lapel with a flash of color. A woman might have a little dish of them on her vanity. As hats disappeared and tailored collars gave way to casual necklines, the hat pin lost its job and the brooch slowly followed, surviving now mostly as heirlooms passed quietly from mother to daughter. The quilted housecoat was the long, warm robe a woman wore around the house in the morning and evening, dressier than a nightgown but made for home. Quilted, zipped up the front, and often in a soft floral, it was respectable enough to answer the door in a pinch. As lighter loungewear and the simple bathrobe took over, the structured housecoat felt heavy and old-fashioned. It is one of the most common things found still hanging in an inherited closet. Crisp, white cotton anklets, the little folded socks worn with flat shoes and saddle oxfords, were a daily detail for girls and young women. They were bleached bright, folded down just so, and replaced often to stay clean. The fold itself was a small point of pride. As stockings, tights, and bare legs took over, the white anklet shrank to childhood wear only, and the careful daily ritual of clean folded socks simply stopped mattering. The bolero was a tiny, cropped jacket that ended above the waist, worn over sleeveless dresses to add a touch of modesty and polish. It buttoned at the chest, or simply hung open over the bodice. A woman could turn a summer sundress into something proper for church with one small layer. As dress codes loosened and sleeveless became perfectly acceptable on its own, the little bolero lost its reason for being and quietly disappeared from the closet. Long satin opera gloves reached past the elbow and were the height of evening elegance. A woman drew them on for formal dances, weddings, and the most special nights of the year. They were impractical, hard to clean, and entirely about glamour. As formal events grew rarer and dress codes relaxed, the long evening glove became a museum piece. Most that survive are still smooth and unworn, kept for an occasion that, in the end, never came again. The pencil skirt arrived as the slim alternative to all those full skirts, fitted straight down to just below the knee with a little walking slit at the back. It demanded a girdle and small, careful steps. Worn with a tucked blouse, it was the sharp, professional look of the late decade. While slim skirts never fully left, the original rigid, restrictive cut, worn with full foundation garments underneath, became its own kind of period piece. Pearls, real or beautifully faked, were the one accessory a woman reached for to finish almost any outfit. A single strand at the throat dressed up a plain blouse or a Sunday dress in an instant. They were given as gifts, saved for, and worn until they wore smooth. While pearls never fully vanished, the daily habit of clasping on a strand before leaving the house faded, and the everyday pearl necklace became something kept for special days only. The half slip filled the gap when a full slip was too much, a waist-down underskirt worn under separates to keep a skirt smooth and lined. It came in nylon with a lace hem and was a quiet, daily essential. A woman owned several in neutral shades. As linings were built into clothes and slips fell out of habit, the half slip became one of those undergarments that simply stopped being bought, fading from the drawer without anyone really noticing. Penny Loafers got their name from the slot across the top, just wide enough to tuck a coin for luck or a phone call. Girls slid a bright penny into each shoe and wore them with anklets and full skirts. They were sturdy, casual, and a little playful. As shoe styles multiplied and the penny in the slot became a forgotten habit, the loafer endured in other forms, but the charming ritual of the lucky penny quietly slipped away. The Sweetheart Neckline shaped the front of countless dresses, dipping in a gentle curve that echoed the top of a heart. It was romantic and flattering, the chosen line for prom dresses, wedding gowns, and special occasion frocks across the decade. As necklines simplified into boat necks and scoops, the fussy curved sweetheart felt dated for every day and retreated to formal wear, then faded even there, surviving now as a deliberate vintage choice rather than the default it once was. Cardigans were worn buttoned only at the very top, draped over the shoulders like a little cape. A casual trick that softened a tidy outfit. A woman might pin the collar with a small clip to keep it in place. It signaled an easy, unhurried elegance. As fashion grew more relaxed and the shoulder drape gave way to simply wearing the sweater, the deliberate little gesture faded, one of the small, unwritten habits that quietly left the everyday wardrobe. The chemise, or sack dress, arrived late in the decade as a rebellion against the cinched waist, hanging loose and straight from the shoulders with no defined waistline at all. It scandalized some and delighted others who were tired of girdles. It was a glimpse of where fashion was heading. Yet the early sack dress was so radical and so unflattering to many that it faded fast, an experiment that pointed the way forward and then disappeared. Compacts and powder cases were small works of art a woman carried in her handbag, gold-toned metal cases that snapped open to a mirror and a pressed powder cake. She freshened her face in a quiet moment without anyone noticing. The case itself was often engraved or jeweled, a small luxury. As loose powder and on-the-go habits changed, the elegant refillable compact gave way to disposable products, and the lovely little cases ended up forgotten in drawers. The trapeze coat and tent styles took the swing idea even further, flaring dramatically from a narrow shoulder to a very wide hem, almost triangular. They were the dramatic outerwear of the late decade, made to float over volume. The look was striking in a photograph and awkward in a crowded room. As silhouettes slimmed down completely, the exaggerated tent shape had nowhere to belong, and it became one of the most quickly dated coats of the era. Petticoat slips with attached crinoline net combined two jobs in one garment, a soft slip on top with stiff net layers below to hold a skirt out. They saved a woman from layering separate pieces and were sold as a clever modern convenience. They were bulky to wash and store. As full skirts went out, this hybrid had two reasons to disappear at once, and it vanished even faster than the plain crinolines and slips it was meant to replace. The neck scarf was a versatile little square a woman tied a dozen ways, knotted at the throat, wrapped over pin curls, or fastened under the chin for a windy drive in an open car. A bright printed silk square added color to a plain coat in a second. As casual style took over and the careful art of tying faded, the neck scarf slipped from a daily flourish to an occasional accessory, and most ended up balled in a drawer, their many knots forgotten. Kitten heels gave women a graceful low heel for all-day wear, a slim, tapered heel under an inch and a half that looked elegant without the punishment of a stiletto. They were the everyday companion to the shirtwaist dress and the pencil skirt. As fashion swung toward both flats and towering heels, the modest in-between height fell out of favor for years. The gentle kitten heel that once carried a woman through a long day quietly disappeared. The clip-on earring ruled because pierced ears were considered improper in many circles. A woman built a collection of clip styles, pearls for day and rhinestones for evening, all pinching gently onto the lobe. She slipped them off the moment they ached. As attitudes about piercing relaxed in the 60s, the clip-on slowly lost ground to the pierced stud, and the once enormous variety of clip styles dwindled to a small corner of the jewelry counter. The matched coordinated suit, a fitted jacket and skirt cut from the very same fabric, was the armor of the well-dressed woman going downtown or to church. Nipped at the waist with a slim skirt below, it signaled seriousness and care. A homemaker often had one good suit she kept for years. As separates and casual mixing took hold, the formal matched suit felt overdressed for daily life, and it retreated to weddings and funerals, then faded from many closets entirely. Long-line bras stretched well past the ribs toward the waist, smoothing the torso under fitted dresses without a separate girdle. They were boned and structured, halfway between a bra and a corset. A woman wore one under her most fitted clothes for that long, smooth line. As softer, everyday lingerie and built-in shaping arrived, the boned long-line bra felt like too much engineering for daily wear, and it quietly slipped out of the drawer. Mules and slide-on house shoes were the soft, backless slippers a woman wore around the home, often trimmed with a little marabou puff or a satin bow. They were dainty and decorative, kept by the bed for padding through the house. They were never meant for the street. As plush, practical slippers took over and the decorative house mule fell out of fashion, the pretty little slide became a relic, surviving mostly in glamorous old photographs. The shawl collar coat featured a soft rolled collar that swept down the front in one continuous curve, a warm and feminine alternative to the sharp notched lapel. It framed the face gently and suited the dressier coats of the era. As coat fashions changed and slimmer, sharper lines came in, the soft, rounded shawl collar came to feel matronly, and the style faded from the racks, remembered now as the gentle, enveloping coat collar of an earlier time. Seamed nylon stockings in flattering shades like taupe and beige were a daily expense. A woman managed carefully, mending small runs with clear polish to stretch their life. A single pair was not cheap, so she rotated and repaired them through the week. The whole economy of careful stocking care, the dabbing, the mending, the saving of the good pair for Sunday, disappeared the moment cheap, durable pantyhose flooded the market and made repair pointless. The wiggle dress took the fitted look to its limit, hugging the body all the way to a narrow hem that forced the small, swaying steps that gave it its name. It was bold, body-conscious, and demanded serious foundation garments. It was the going-out dress of the confident woman. As comfort and movement became priorities, the restrictive wiggle silhouette became impractical for real life, and it slipped from the wardrobe into the realm of pure vintage glamour. Hankies, embroidered cotton handkerchiefs, lived in every handbag and pocket. A woman carried a pretty one for show and a plainer one for use, and a special embroidered hanky was a common small gift. Daughters learned to hem and embroider their own. As paper tissue spread into every home and purse, the cloth handkerchief lost its everyday job, and the embroidered hankies were folded into linen drawers, kept for sentiment long after they stopped being carried. Petticoat aprons and pinafore styles wrapped a woman almost entirely for the messiest work, a full bib apron that covered the chest and tied behind, protecting the whole dress from the wash basin to the canning pot. They were sewn at home from sturdy cotton and worn hard. As convenience foods and modern appliances cut down the heaviest kitchen labor, the full protective pinafore became unnecessary, and the practical garment that once shielded a whole outfit quietly left the kitchen. The fascinator and feathered cocktail hat were the small decorative headpieces worn for parties and special afternoons. A wisp of net, a feather, a cluster of silk flowers anchored to the hair. They were pure ornament, a final flourish on a fancy outfit. As formal headwear faded from American life almost entirely, the little cocktail hat became the rarest survivor of the great hat tradition, found now mostly tucked in tissue inside a forgotten hat box. Capri pants, cut to end just above the ankle, were the chic, casual trouser that signaled a modern, relaxed woman. Slim and cropped, they were worn with flats and a tied blouse for an easy continental look. They were daring at a time when many women still wore skirts daily. While capris cycle back into fashion now and then, the original slim post-war cut, worn as a fresh statement of casual freedom, belongs firmly to its decade. Garter belts, worn instead of a full girdle by younger women, held up stockings with a lighter band around the waist and 4 dangling clips. They were a step toward freedom from the heavy foundation garment while still solving the same problem of keeping stockings up. When pantyhose combined stocking and waistband into one piece, the garter belt lost its entire reason to exist almost overnight, and a daily fixture of the dressing routine simply ceased to be needed. The bouffant petticoat dress combined a fitted bodice with such a full, puffed skirt that it needed an architecture of net beneath it to stand out. These were the party dresses of the decade, the ones in the photographs where the skirt looks impossibly wide. They were beautiful and utterly impractical for daily life. As the volume drained out of fashion, the bouffant dress became the single most recognizable casualty of the change, a frozen image of a vanished silhouette. Beneath everything else, the girdle and stocking system depended on a daily ritual no one questioned. A woman dressed from the inside out in a fixed order, the girdle, the stockings clipped, the slip, then the dress. It was a sequence learned young and never written down. They never wrote it down, but every woman knew the order by heart. When the foundation garments vanished, that entire choreography of getting dressed simply dissolved into nothing. The Peignoir Set, a delicate matching nightgown and sheer robe in soft nylon and lace, was a popular gift for brides and a quiet luxury for ordinary women. The flowing robe layered over the gown for a glamorous, film star feel at home. As nightwear grew simpler and more practical, the romantic 2-piece peignoir set faded, and many were tucked away nearly unworn, too pretty to wear out and too dated to bring back into the bedroom. The cuffed and rolled blue jean had its own brief moment for women, worn snug with a wide cuff folded at the ankle for casual weekends and country outings. It was considered a little rebellious, far from the everyday dress code. The specific way they were rolled and worn with a tucked shirt and flats marked the style as firmly of its time. As jeans became universal and the cuffing fell away, that particular 50s look quietly disappeared. The bed coat and matching slipper set was the last small luxury of the closet, a soft quilted jacket paired with little slippers in the same fabric, a coordinated outfit just for the most private hours at home. It was a gift a husband might give, modest and tender. As loungewear simplified into a single robe and any old slipper, the careful matching of a bedcoat to its slippers stopped. One more quiet coordination that nobody bothered with anymore. What ties all 25 of these pieces together is not just fashion. It is a whole way of getting dressed that asked for time, care, and intention every single morning. Each garment had a job, a ritual, and an unwritten rule behind it. The clothes did not just vanish on their own. They were quietly let go as the world sped up and asked women to do more with less fuss, and the closet changed to match. Standing at that closet in 1958, a woman could not have known how thoroughly these things would disappear. To her, they were simply clothes, ordinary, practical, a little beautiful, worn without a second thought. But each one carried a way of living, a standard, a quiet pride in being put together. Your grandmother knew something they stopped teaching, and a great deal of it lived in the small, careful choices she made before she even left the bedroom. These garments did not disappear because they failed. They disappeared because the world that needed them moved on, and nobody thought to write down what they meant. The attic remembers, even when we forget, and every yellowed slip and dusty hat box still holds a little of the care that made it matter. Looking back is not about going backward. It is about honoring the women who got dressed with such quiet intention every ordinary day of their lives. If any of these brought back a memory of your mother or your grandmother, I would love to hear it. So tell me in the comments which piece you remember best. There is a whole world hiding in what nobody said out loud, and I will keep bringing it back into the light. Subscribe and stay with me, and together we will rescue these forgotten things before they slip away for good. Thank you for spending this time in the attic with me.